Alright boys, I'll give you all a little update. Currently about 6 hours in at 24 and a half miles. There's a storm rolling in and it's lightning, so I guess they're pausing the race and pulling us all out of the fields. Big storm back there. I've walked way more of this than what I thought I would. I ran the first 10 miles, and then after that, it's just been walking the uphills, some of the flats, and then running the downhills and some of the flats. Probably going to get some mileage unaccounted for since they're pausing the race, and I got to walk back to camp, and then I guess start back up there again. Hurting, but this is fun. I'm enjoying it. Just not able to run as much as I thought. So legs are hurting. Been in the pain cave and just having to walk a lot. But I'll catch you guys after the race. Well, here I am. I survived the 8-hour ultra. We're gonna split in headache right now. I guess I'll start with giving you guys a little bit of a recap of the race. I had a goal or a plan of attempting to run a full marathon before I stopped and started walking laps. I think I ended up making it to like 11 miles before I started, walking the uphills and then running the flats and the downhills. Somewhere in the middle or towards the end of the race, there's a big storm rolling in and they pulled everybody out of the fields, out of the race, and we all had to walk back to base camp. And then, 20 minutes later, they were like, all right, y'all are good to, go back out. So I had some mileage unaccounted for, and I'm not real sure what that looked like on lap times or, lap distance or all that. Because, it's just, we were in the middle of the race and they're like, all right, walk back to camp for now. And, you can come back and start here in about 20 minutes. So that was a little weird. And then it's supposed to be an 8-hour ultra. They ended up calling it quits at 7 hours and 40 minutes, I think. There was a huge, another rainstorm coming in. It poured down rain on us for the last 15 minutes or so. And so they didn't let anybody else start a last lap. So I finished the race at 28 miles. And 28 and a half, and so I ended up running a mile and a half extra of bonus miles. The biggest takeaway that I've learned from this race is that I need more calories. As of right now, I've burned 4,501, and it is 6:58 in the afternoon. So I've burned 4,500 calories today, and I've only ate, if I'm lucky, 1,500. I've probably had, somewhere between like 7 and 10 bananas through the race and a handful of gel packets, and that's really all that I've ate today. So I ran for 11 miles, started walking, and then I got to the point from 12 to 20 miles where I was really struggling. I couldn't get enough water in me, which now that I'm after the race, I'm looking back, I think it might have been calories. But my legs were on the verge of cramping pretty bad. It's just that sensation of a cramp, just not fully cramped yet. So starting about mile 11 or 12, some real pain started to set in, and, lived with that for the next 6 hours. But yeah, I was drinking as much water as I could, and then, I was on the verge of like throwing the water back up because I was drinking too much and trying to run. And so from 12 to 20 was really tough. Just didn't have enough energy in my body for what I was trying to do. And then it seems like after 20 miles, I kind of hit like a second wind and was able to start running some more of the flat sections. I don't know, that's about it really. Mentally, I was hurting. I kept trying to run the last lap. So this race was a 3.2 mile loop, like a 5K loop. And you ran that as many times as you can in 8 hours. So I was trying to run what I figured would be my last loop, and it ended up being my last loop. I tried to run that and, just couldn't make myself run. And then, once I finished and I just had to get 1.5 miles on flat ground on pavement, I was able to, crank that mile down at 8 minutes and 36 seconds. But my feet are hurting, my legs are sore. At one point during the race, my hands started swelling, fingers got all puffy and like real blotchy. There was another person out there running, and she told me, she's ran a bunch of ultras. She's attempted a 100-miler. And so I was glad when I met up with her. I figured she had some experience, and she's like, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "Well, I'm feeling okay, but my hands are swelling up." And she was just like, "Yeah." It kind of caught me off guard. I was like, "Well, is that normal? Like, do I need to sit down or something?" And she told me it happens pretty regular. So hands swelled up. No big deal, I guess. I am tired of the dog, man. My little brother ended up putting in 20 miles. That was his goal, so we both hit our goal. He got 20, I got 30. And then, I'm tired, man, I'm sorry. On the drive home, I felt like my eyes kept crossing. I kept getting double vision about every 10 seconds down the road. I'd be driving, and I was, trying to keep eyes focused on the truck in front of me. And before I knew it, there was 3 or 4 trucks. Looked like a spider web of, road lines coming together. And so I'd blink real fast and kind of, shake my head and come back to my senses. And then it got to the point where I was kind of nodding off, and so my little brother was asleep, and I had to pee really bad, so I was trying to make it to a gas station. And so I ended up having to call my buddy and talk to him just to kind of keep me awake on the rest of the drive. Had something else I was going to say. I completely forgot. Feeling very, very stiff. Left foot is hurting pretty bad, starting to get some soreness up in the traps. I don't know, it's about all I can think of to tell you. It was a good run though, brother. Good run. I learned that one, I need to eat more in my next ultra. By far, I need to eat way more. And then 2, not nearly as good at running or as invincible as I thought I was. Never had any real serious fall on the ground, agonizing pain. But for about 6 hours, I just had this dull ache in my legs that was probably a 6 or a 7. Just all the muscles were constantly on the edge of cramping. And when you're walking with that, you're like, okay, I can manage this. And then you try to run a flat section or run a downhill, and then the legs almost, start seizing up immediately. And then so you got to stop and walk again, try to drink some more water, and try to flush that out. But yeah, miles 12 to 20 were pretty bad, and then I hit a second wind sometime after 20, and the last 10 miles came a little easier. It wasn't as hot today as it was supposed to be. It was forecasted to be like 90 and sunny. It ended up being like mid to low 80s and pretty cloudy. And then, you know, of course, we had a big rainstorm hit us too. But I'm tired, probably gonna sleep the next 3 days. I'm done running for about a week probably. I got some serious recovery work to do. I looked at my Garmin stats. I think my running time was like four and a half hours. And then I had like 3 hours of walking time, and then about 30 minutes of idle time, which was, you know, stopping and filling up my water bottles, all that good stuff. I'll try to give you all a little update tomorrow, you know, kind of how I'm feeling, and if I forgot anything else, then I'll go over that tomorrow. Kind of struggling to put some things together mentally right now. But anyways, with that being said, I guess I'll catch you on tomorrow. One thing I forgot to add is that, like, when I'm standing up and I suck my stomach in, one side of my rib cage like sticks out a little farther. It's always been like that, but this left side of my rib cage sticks out a little farther than my right. And after, you know, we sat down at that like 24-mile mark, about 6 hours in, after we had to sit down for 10 or 15 minutes, I really noticed some pain on the left side of this rib cage, and it feels like this entire area is bruised, like it's kind of swollen and very, very tender. I don't know if, you know, the running vest had something to do with that. I mean, I really didn't think the running vest bounced that much, but for the last 5 miles, that over here, the running vest was a pretty big issue for me. That's one big problem I had. It got to the point where every time I ran, I was having to grab my vest and pull it off of me, and you know, try to run while holding the vest pulled out, just because this left side of my rib cage was like how tender it was. That was one big issue that I had. Hopefully that gets better in a couple days, because it is sore to the touch. But that is one thing I wanted to add. So. Sit. You don't listen anymore. Sit. Good. Old Dad said I'm looking smaller, which I think I'm typically weighing about 147 or 148. I'm down to 145 right now. I feel terrible. All right, boys, it is day 2 after the race. Well, I guess day 1 after the race. It's now Sunday. I'm headed to church, and I just raced yesterday. I want to say there's a lot of fatigue and a lot of like sleepiness that I can't really wash out yet. I didn't sleep very good last night at all. I've been through church this morning, just really struggled to pay attention, real tired, and I've basically laid in bed and tried to sleep all afternoon. Very, very tired. Just that's about all I have to say. Lower back is really beat up, man. What is in the most pain is my lower back, and then second from that is probably my foot, mainly my left foot, and then I've just got some, obvious muscle soreness in the legs. but I think in a day or two, this lower back fatigue and pain will wash out, and I'll be back to normal. Now again, it'll probably be at least 4 or 5 days before I, get back to running again. Probably a few days before I even hit a lift, honestly. So now that I've had some time to think about it, did I learn anything about myself through this race? One thing is, I don't know what I was expecting from that race, but I would almost say that it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. But I think a big part of that is my inability to push. For my 30th mile, I ran an 8-minute and 36-second mile. So if I had that much left in my legs, then I believe I could have ran more than what I did. It was just mentally, I was, kind of struggling mentally. Honestly, I pretty much just had a goal of maintain constant forward motion. If I wasn't running, then I was going to be speed walking. And that's kind of what I let myself do. I never really wanted to stop. I always wanted to be moving. But looking back now, running that 8-minute mile at the end, that tells me my legs had more to give than what I wanted to give. So that's one takeaway from that. Then also, I need some more miles on my legs before I tackle anything like this again. I know I was considering a 50K, and a 50K is, I think, 31 miles. And so training wise, I definitely have to have more miles on my legs before I go for a 50K. Now I feel like I'm in shape to run a 25K. Probably not fast, but I ran one yesterday, so still gonna run a 25K this fall, I believe. I think that I need a lot more core strength. If running is going to produce the same back pain that, heavy squatting does, then that tells me that, the lower back is just not prepared and my core is not prepared for that type of loading. Which I remember earlier this year, I ran, I think, my first 10-mile run, and my back was hammered. I was sore for 3 or 4 days in the lower back from a 10-mile run, but slowly built up to it, and now, I've been running 8 or 9 miles in one run once a week, and no back pain from those runs. So it tells me that it's just a process of getting adapted to the load, and just getting stronger. Got to be stronger, more resilient. I think I'd mentioned it yesterday, but on the drive home yesterday, I was so tired after the race. Driving down the road, it was about an hour and 40-minute drive home, and I had to pee really bad, and so I was trying to make it to a gas station, and my brother was sleeping in the passenger seat, and I kept, my eyes would keep losing focus, and I kept getting double vision, and so I had a truck out in front of me, and I would try to keep focus on that truck, and I felt like every 10 seconds to a minute my eyes would start to lose track of it. I'd see 3 or 4 trucks, and then it'd be a spider web of road lines in front of me, and it led to me sort of drifting off while I was driving. And at one point I opened my eyes and I was way over in the left lane on the highway, and right then I called my buddy. Called him. I was like, dude, I got to do something. I'm trying to make it to a gas station because I got to pee really bad. But I was like, I'm about to fall asleep while driving. So I called him, just to kind of give me something to do instead of, stare at road lines. And after that, I was pretty good. Just something I've got to watch out for. I would have pulled over and took a nap on the side of the road, except that the highway was pretty busy. I didn't want to get out on the side of the highway and take a pee. But any other scenario, then I would have pulled over and taken a nap. I don't really listen to music, but I'd even fiddled with my radio and turned on some music, and that just basically went in one ear and out the other. I was so tired coming home yesterday. But after I got out at that gas station and walked around there, it's good to go after that. I'm excited to see where training goes from here on out. That I've obviously got some more mental training to do. I don't know, man. Also want to add that at one point during that race, my hands started swelling up. I'm not real sure what the cause of that was, but it was pretty interesting to see that. And I feel like even now, the second day or the first day after the race, my toes look a little swelled up. Surprisingly, I didn't have any blisters on my feet or anything, no blisters at all. Yeah, my toes look a little swelled. My hands look okay now, but this band here on my wrist, yesterday that was completely tight around my wrist. There was no gap in it like you see there. So that was quite a bit of swelling. And that turned out to be normal, I guess, but I reckon I got to get inside church. So I'll catch you guys later. I want to show you boys something real quick. Training readiness 1. I don't know that my watch has ever showed that before. But yeah, looks like I need some recovery work, I suppose. Back to that ultra for a second. So I ran that entire thing with no music, no podcast or anything, which surprisingly, I seen at least, 3 or 4 other people out there with, no headphones or anything. So, kudos to them. It's impressive in today's world, which is kind of sad. One thing that I've always tried to, really get on to people about is, if you can't sit in a room with your own thoughts, like if you are not comfortable with who you are, you've really got some self-work to do, man. I think everybody should be able to live without entertainment sources at every, spare moment of time. We're so entertained and distracted all the time that, we never have to sit with our own thoughts, never have to conversate with ourselves, and you never really have to pay any attention to who you are. I think that's a big problem in today's society. A lot of people are out of touch with who they are. So I ran for 8 hours, and the only time that I even got on my phone through that race was in that intermission break, and I pulled out my phone and recorded a little update for you guys. And that was the only time I'd even pulled out my phone, aside from the 1 or 2 times that I called my brother and told him to eat a gel and something like that. I think I called him at one point when my hands were swelling up. I told him I may pass out on the course or something. I didn't know your hand swelling up was normal, so I called him and I was like, "Hey buddy," I said, "I feel okay, but my hands are really swelled up, so I don't know what's going to happen from here on out. I feel okay, but just giving you a heads up." That was pretty well the only times I'd ever been on my phone. It felt good to be out there just present in the moment. I don't know, I try to keep coming up with things to bring to you guys from this race. Mentally, touched on it earlier, but just not exactly where I wanted to be mentally. I think I touched on it yesterday too, but there was a constant threat of more pain. So I ran from 0 to like 11 miles, and really struggled with nutrition and like water and stuff from miles like 12 or 13 all the way up to 20. The legs were really on the verge of cramping, and I just couldn't get enough fluid back in my system without feeling like I was going to puke it back up. And so hit like a second wind after mile like 20 or so. But I'd be walking and the legs would, feel good again, and then I'd run for 30 seconds and my legs would be right back at that cramping sensation. And so, it was a steady pain of like a 6 or a 7 on like a 0 to 10 scale. Completely manageable, but it really prevented me from, pushing any farther. I was kind of scared of that pain. But then by the end of it, I had an 8-minute and 30-second mile left in my legs. So I don't know. I'm just very new to the ultra running game. That was my first ever run over 15 miles. Never even been on my feet that long at all either. So, just got some things to learn for sure. But that's all I got for now.